Are you ready to delve into the mysteries of North Korea from a unique vantage point? Join NK News and Koryo Tours for the exclusive North Korea from a Distance tour. This isn't just another tour, it's a journey through the pivotal inter-Korean sites, guided by leading experts in DPRK affairs. With North Korea's borders closed for over 4 years, our carefully crafted itinerary offers you a rare glimpse into the region's complex dynamics. Experience an array of border location tours, engage in enlightening briefings, and participate in Q&A sessions that promise deep insights into the realities of North Korea. Plus, seize the chance to cultivate valuable connections within the vibrant North Korea watching community. Whether you're a scholar, a journalist, or simply a curious soul, the North Korea from a Distance tour is your gateway to understanding one of the most enigmatic countries on the globe. Spaces are limited for this unique educational journey. Don't miss your chance to be part of this exceptional experience. Visit NK News or contact Koryo Tours to reserve your spot today.
Hello listeners and welcome to the NK News podcast. This short interview was recorded on Tuesday, the 6th of August, 2024, and joining me via StreamYard is my colleague Colin Zwirko. Colin, welcome back on the show.
Hey Jacco, how's it going?
It is going excellently. Now you've chosen 3 interesting and timely stories to talk about. So let's start with missile launches. I understand that there are now 250 new tactical ballistic missile launches on the front line with South Korea, that is on the North Korean side. And if you could describe for our listeners the photograph from the Rodong Shinmun at the handover ceremony of these ballistic missile launches on August the 1st. It's quite dramatic.
Yes, so North Korea published this on Monday morning, saying that they held a ceremony in Pyongyang to hand over 250 launch vehicles for the Hwasong 11D short-range or close-range ballistic missile system. And these each can carry 4 missiles, so that's 1,000 missiles that they're saying will be deployed. These are, state media says that they're nuclear-capable missiles. They can be fitted with nuclear warheads, but they also would serve a conventional role. So there's no one's saying that they're about to have 1,000 nukes on the border because they are not believed to have that many nuclear warheads to begin with. And so they're using some language like to frontline units. So that doesn't mean right on the border. It means units that are responsible for the border. So they can be a little far out from the border. They can be closer. And they just held this ceremony on Sunday. So they're not there yet, but they were officially handed over. So
and the handover was done in Pyongyang, was it?
Yeah, in Pyongyang at the military parade training complex, which is a replica of Kim Il-sung Square. So they had 250 of these launchers set out in perfect rows, filling the entire square. And they held this big ceremony there at night. And they also had a heavy metal version of the national anthem, which was something very strange. So I recommend you check out a story on our website.
When you say heavy metal version, are we talking about distorted guitars and what's
like
singing as well? Was there singing or was it instrumental?
Yeah, singing and heavy metal guitars and drums. It was quite strange, but So these weapons are something they've been showing us that they've been producing for. Kim Jong Un showed off the factories where they were producing them. Watch out, we think we have found one of the other factories where they might be being produced. So I'm working on a story about that, which hasn't been disclosed in public yet. So
for our listeners who don't have a Rodong Shinmun subscription, that's a good reason to get onto nknews.org and find Colin's article from yesterday, the 5th of August, titled North Korea Says It Deployed Nuclear-Capable Missiles to South Korean Border. With these launches, transport-directed launches or TELs, have you ever seen so many TELs in one place at one time, Colin?
Yeah, that's a good point. I guess you can count them all up at a parade of different types, and you can get over 100. But yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, it shows just that they're able to produce these things. There's been a lot of doubt over the years about their ability to manufacture these.
Right.
I've also been curious about just how much this weapon system in particular has been related to their exports to Russia. So they haven't been found to be exporting this missile to Russia yet, just the larger version of the Hwasong-11, which is the Hwasong-11A. But they're producing all these launchers, and it comes as pretty much, we're finding in hindsight, when Kim goes to a missile factory in the last 2 years, later on we find out it has something to do with their export plans to Russia. This is, not every single case, but this is becoming a trend. So yeah, we've also got an article coming up from a contributor this week showing this exact missile system deployed in the field already prior to this ceremony. So it's really ramping up. Like the point is that North Korea has the ability to produce these things. Yes, we don't know how many warheads they have, but the conventional missiles serve an effective purpose to deter South Korea as well.
Well, speaking of doubts, is there any reason to believe that these TELs might not be fully operational, or that they might not actually be loaded with ready-to-fire missiles?
I mean, I think we can question whether or not they have the amount of missiles, but I don't think we could question their ability to produce that number of missiles. I don't know how long. I don't know where this exact missile is produced. It might be produced at the Hamhung factory that Kim went last year that produces the bigger version of that missile. But yeah, I mean, people who like to question whether or not they have this amount of missiles or not kind of miss the point. It's something that a lot of analysts harp on a lot, which is that deterrence factor works regardless, and it's not a completely Potemkin program. There might be some fooling around on the edges of the numbers, but
am I right in understanding that with this kind of a launcher, only one type of missile or one size of missile can fit into that system?
Yes, into that truck and those launch boxes on the vehicle. Yeah.
So those 250 TELs can only fit the Hwasong-11. Is that right?
The Hwasong-11D, which is a smaller version of the
Okay. Now, why do you think Kim Jong Un's decided to do this, to send them to the frontline units?
A lot of his speech was about his U.S. policy, U.S. and South Korea policy. It's very consistent in his speeches in the last couple of years, which is he's saying, I have to do this to show the U.S. that that our nuclear weapons program is irreversible. We're never giving it up. He even said something interesting in this speech, which is he said we have the sovereign right to continue building up our weapons and nuclear weapons, even if they were to be in the process of dialogue. So he's saying next time there won't be any kind of freezes. He's not going to offer any freezes. He basically says we're doing this for our defense. We don't trust you guys, so this is another show. And he says we're going to do this every year. He actually said the word unfiltered. So he's kind of projecting that in the future he's going to be more open and show off his military production more openly, kind of like you see in Russia or China, where they're just a lot more open about, not totally open, but a lot more open about their numbers and just how real their systems are. So we might see little training videos pop up on the internet of a unit practicing loading missiles into these in the future. And Kim might not even be there. That's kind of a normal military thing. So, yeah.
Has the UN command or South Korea expressed any concern about this?
So there was a regular briefing yesterday from South Korea's defense ministry and also the Ministry of Unification. And both of them really brushed this off. I think kind of like we know this is coming. They showed us these missiles. They showed us these vehicles a long time ago. We know they're making them. We saw them preparing for this ceremony. It doesn't change much in the grand scheme of things if there were to be a war, but it reinforces the reality, which maybe some people don't recognize, which is that you cannot denuclearize North Korea. They're not going to disarm, and that they're getting closer and closer to convincing some of these skeptics that they do have capable enough systems, at least, to be effective in a combat situation.
Okay, all right. Well, we've spent a lot of time on that story, so we're going to have to rush through the next two. We've got one on flooding. Colin, you're our eye on the sky at NK News and NK Pro. You're able to spot things in satellite photographs that I could only dream of. Tell us what you found in satellite images related to recent flooding in North Korea that you wrote about for NK Pro on August the 1st.
Yeah, the flooding that state media that Kim Jong Un went to a flooded area in Sinuiju, which is on the very northwest corner of the country on the border with China, and the Yalu River which separates the two countries, that flooded, and the Sinuiju is completely covered in water. The outskirts on the northeast side of it, just the land was completely covered in water. These are low-lying sometimes kind of large islands on the river.
Mm-hmm.
But he did mention that there was flooding also in Jiagang province and Lianggang province, but he didn't really go into the details there. He said there was loss of life, quote unquote. There were deaths, but then later he denied that there were any deaths in Sinuiju. So it seems to be, and so what we uncovered in our reporting was really dire situation in Jiagang province and Lianggang province. And the flooding was crazy. The mudslides, there was one village that was just completely wiped out by a gigantic mudslide. I forgot, 1 to 200 meters wide of just destruction, completely wiped out mud. And those people probably didn't get much warning, if any at all. Very violent looking. There's broken bridges all up and down the Jiangda River, which goes through north to south through Kange. So it seems to me that some people died. I have no idea how much. State media is really downplaying this, and it's not only a humanitarian tragedy, but you got to wonder what's going on with his weapons development and weapons exports to Russia as a result of this.
Right, because this area is known for weapons factories, right?
Yeah, we can see on the imagery that the flooding directly affected these factories, whether it's cutting them off from the rail and road networks. Yeah. Or, not a whole lot of evidence of the factories themselves being damaged, but more like the workers' homes and the transportation in and out. So I think people watching the Ukraine war, Russia's war on Ukraine, would want to look to this as a real peripheral, but probably going to affect things as far as Russian arms, Russia using North Korean arms.
Now, South Korea has offered relief assistance. Has North Korea responded?
North Korea, forgive me, I haven't seen exactly what he said, but I did see some reporting that let's just say he's not going to accept South Korea's offer of help, but Russia also helped, and Kim Jong Un, Anton, one of our reporters here, wrote that he has not accepted the Russian help either. Not sure if he directly addressed the South Korean help, but we cannot expect him to accept the South Korean help.
What's your take on all this, Colin? What does it say about North Korea's flood control systems, given that heavy rains tend to come regularly on an annual basis?
State media talks a big game about preparations. They do try a lot of tree planting. One of the main kind of motivations of tree planting is preventing erosion on the mountainsides. I honestly don't know how you prevent something like this in these cases when there's a gigantic mudslide raging through a narrow valley, where it goes from it's like a very steep angle from the top of a nearly 2,000 meter mountain down to the river, which is just below. I don't know, maybe you don't build a village there in the first place. I don't know if you can prevent stuff like that, but surely there are signs of weak construction of bridges in some cases. Other cases they survived. They're talking a lot about building up river embankments, and we can see, I haven't nailed down a precise case where they said this embankment is a new one, which is good, and then that it now failed. But I imagine there are some of those in Jiagang province. Yeah.
Okay, now on to our last story. For NK Pro late last month, you wrote a two-part article about North Korean weapons factory upgrades. Why two parts? Is there a lot going on?
There is a lot going on, and this is also about the hints at what they're doing with the Russian exports. I would say a big takeaway is that, there's upgrades or construction at over 10 known or new weapons factories across the country right now. A lot of these are anti-tank missiles and rocket artillery, or the launch vehicles for these systems. And some of them have been found to be exported to Russia already. Some of them, new evidence is emerging just in the last week that they might have already started to export things like anti-tank missiles. So that would be new. And in hindsight, it's very interesting because like I said earlier, it makes us think, maybe a lot of this, since the last 2 or a little more years, Kim Jong Un has been doing a lot of weapons factory visits, which he didn't used to do in the same way. He used to say they were normal factories. Now he's saying they're weapons factories, but he's not saying where they are, and then we have to go find where they are. But yeah, a lot of them are, we can say a lot of the state media around this development is about anti-South Korea, short-range systems, threatening South Korea. Are they preparing for war? There was that whole thing last year earlier this year about preparing for war, and that controversial analysis. And I think that a lot of it actually points to Kim Jong Un has some new export contracts. A lot of money or something else coming in that he's bartering for, maybe with regards to his developing, nuclear weapons or a nuclear submarine or something. And that's very important to him. And that pushes the rapid construction of these factories. And we don't see that kind of rapid construction or urgency when it comes to the domestic systems in some cases. So there's a lot to figure out here still, but it's really all about, number one, they have a lot of resources to build these weapons now that maybe they didn't in the past, or definitely not in the early stages of COVID. They're getting help from abroad, probably, and they're mass producing now in numbers that they weren't before. Yeah.
Now, your July 26 article titled "North Korea Expands Factories Making Anti-Tank Missiles Russia Reportedly Wants" gives some good brief details about 5 new factories. I encourage listeners who have an NK Pro subscription to go and look at the table in which you neatly put all the details together. And these factories have all been built in the last 3 years. And of course, there's also a plethora of satellite photographs that you've analyzed and kindly labeled for readers. What's that process like, Colin, of trawling through photos, knowing that there is something to find? Do you feel a small sense of victory each time you're able to link a place to a name?
It's a puzzle for sure. One of the things in the first article of that 2-part series that I was pretty proud of was that there are these images of Kim Jong Un Kim Jong Un is looking at some surface-to-air missiles, anti-aircraft missiles. And we've had these photos for almost a decade now. They were released later. But looking at these things day in, day out, you start to recognize the factory managers who often go from a weapons factory onto maybe a central weapons role or a position like the guy in Jagang who went on from this Huichan Youth Electrical Complex, which is what we found is producing surface-to-air missiles. Just by recognizing the faces and then using satellite imagery to match the photo with to geolocate where he is in that photo. So that was quite interesting, and we can now look at that place and say, oh, they're upgrading. Maybe they're about to push their surface-to-air missile production. Is that a domestic concern, or is that about exporting? These kinds of things are all coming out of these initial little puzzles from images. So yeah, it's very interesting.
Excellent. All right. Well, this is it's great work. Wonderful analysis again, as usual, Colin. And thank you so much for coming on the show and telling us and our readers about it.
Thanks, Jacco. I appreciate it.
Okay. And tune in again next week for more. In the intricate world of Korean affairs, tailored intelligence makes all the difference. Korea Risk Group's consulting services offer specialized, actionable intelligence designed to guide your Korea-related decisions. We provide bespoke consulting services that cater to your unique challenges and goals. From policy analysis to market entry strategies, we bring clarity to complexity. Transform uncertainty into opportunity and visit KoreaPro.com Solutions today. Ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end of our podcast episode for today. Our thanks go to Brian Betts and Alana Hill for facilitating this episode, and to our post-recording producer genius Gabby Magnuson, who cuts out all the extraneous noises, awkward silences, bodily functions, and fixes the audio levels. Thank you, and listen again next time.